Hello, today I'm going to be filming fundamental analysis part 1 for stock analysis in Malaysian stocks. So, today the first thing we're going to be talking about is the math formula. So the first thing you guys should be knowing about is the earnings. Now the earnings are very important. So the first thing you should know about earnings is that they are very important. But it's not very important if you don't know where they come from. Earnings are reported once the product is delivered to the customer. However, if they haven't paid, it still counts as an earning. So for example, here's a question for you guys. This is a test quiz for you guys. If company A, company Hugo had delivered $100 million worth of products to the customer, does that mean that I have gotten my 100 million? I'll give you guys 3 seconds. 3, 2, 1. Okay. So the answer is, well, it doesn't mean that I did receive 100 million. If your cash flow or something I'll tell you later is actually above or below, then the earnings just isn't that true. Now, this can be found in the financial statements. However, if you want to go find where these earnings are from, you can go to the annual report where the chairman will tell you a bit more about the thing. Okay? So next thing I told you about is cash flow. Cash flow from operations, also known as CFSO. Cash flow from operations. Cash flow from operations is something that I just told you about. So cash flow could be above, or I just want to tell you guys something. So normally cash flow will either be at the same earnings or below. However, if you're investing in a telecommunication company, you would want to go ahead and the CFFO might be above the earnings. However, one thing you must know is that most companies, other than telecommunication companies, will normally have their CFFO slightly below. But if it's too low, then this might be a bad sign. Okay, next thing we should talk about is of course, since we're in I wrote wrong. FCF, also known as free cash flow. Free cash flow is very important. Again, free cash flow is like cash flow, so it depends, but it's how much. It's CFFO minus CAPEX. Now another important thing, CAPEX. CAPEX is what I call capital expenditure. Now, capital expenditure is something you would like to talk about. So remember, we are talking about, do you remember the topic of today? Yeah. So CAPEX is a metric for it's an unnecessary expense. For example, if I were to see a company A was doing plumbing jobs, and someone sued me. Someone sued Company A for $100 million. Can you guys tell me if this is expense or capex? 3, 2, 1. So the answer is capex, because this is an unnecessary expense. Most people, you don't always get sued by the company. It helps you that you don't always get sued, unless you always get sued, but that still doesn't count. Now, as we said, FCF is CFFO minus capex. So free cash flow is very important if you're investing for dividends. But since the topic of today is stock investing in Malaysia stock market, value investing for part 1, we won't talk much about the free cash flow, but it's still important, okay? So next thing we should talk about is, the next thing we should be talking about is obviously something you should be knowing about. If you don't know yet, still okay. Let's talk about ROA. ROE. Just want to tell you guys something. These last 2 metrics are the last ones for this video. After this, there will be any more metrics, I'll tell you. So this is ROA is return on assets. Return on assets is something. Return on assets is how. Sorry, that's just my little brother. So return on assets is how much you return. Return on assets is how much is the return on your assets. Let me give you a quick example. Let's say I own a property. It could be called anything. It's called the Hummington House. The Hummington House is borrowed. Let's don't say about the leverage first. I buy it for $100,000 and I rent it out for $10,000 a month. So in a month, I made a ROA of return on assets of 10%. Sounds easy, right? Okay. We will get back to this on part 2 for value investing in stocks. Value investing for stocks in MRY in Malaysia Stock Exchange. In part 2 for very quickly. However, what you need to know, I'll explain further on if you have leverage in the ROA. But the next thing, ROE is actually how much return on your equity. Return on equity. However, return on equity. So the difference between ROA and ROE is that ROE you usually will count is ROA times financial leverage. Financial leverage is something financial leverage is, of course, if I borrow $10,000 and I pay $19,000, then my financial leverage ratio is, of course, we'll get to that on part 2. You know what? Just want to tell you guys something. Don't worry, guys. I will save ROE and ROA for part 2. Okay? Goodbye.